Hi everybody, thank you for coming by. I'm here to talk to you guys about more aspects in soulmate astrology. I did a video last week on the rising sign, both as it pertains to soulmates in astrology and also to your own natal chart. There are some misconceptions or underdeveloped ideas, in my opinion, around certain placements in the astrology chart. Today I want to talk to you about Chiron. Now, Chiron's not a planet, it is an asteroid, but it plays a very big role in soulmate astrology, and I'll explain why. I'll be using tarot to show as well, because again, it helps keep me on track, and also it's a good illustrated way to show an example of this concept. First of all, when you're looking in your own birth chart to find Chiron, it looks like a key. In your chart, it literally looks like one of those old skeleton keys. That's your Chiron sign. Now, Chiron, which is in Greek mythology the wounded healer, I highly recommend looking up some of that mythology. It's fascinating. I won't go into it here today because, well, I'm far from an expert on it, and we're here to talk about astrology more than mythology today. Chiron, for me as an astrologer, plays a huge role in terms of relationship astrology. It does mark the point of your biggest wound, your biggest unhealed wound. Karmically speaking, we arrive in this lifetime with that Chiron placement for a reason. The Chiron, where your wound lays and the house it's in your chart, is very important in terms of showing where areas of your life may have caused you pain. And from that education of the pain, from that processing of Chiron, you then now have the tools and abilities to recognize in other people where that need is or how you can help. Because Chiron is the wounded healer, it is from your own pain that you can offer that wisdom and healing to the collective. The placement of Chiron in the sky is right between Saturn and Uranus, and it has kind of a weird, it passes inside Uranus and crosses over top of Saturn. It has kind of an unstable and erratic orbit, which explains a lot about when wounds get triggered within us, particularly in relationships. So every astrologer, as I said, has different aspects that they look at when it comes to soulmate charts. In my last video on the rising sign and its importance in relationships, I explained when you do a synastry chart, which is taking the two natal charts of two people and stacking them on top of each other to calculate the contacts and points and house placements of how they affect each other, and thereby how the relationship will play out. When you do a synastry chart, again, every astrologer has certain things that they look for. When we're talking about soulmate astrology, for me, Chiron is one of the first things I look at. First of all, of course, it is your wound. It is the parts in you that get triggered. And when we're dealing in relationships, particularly deep emotional relationships, it naturally is going to bring things up to the surface. I'm going to use tarot here to illustrate why. Again, it keeps me on track, but also makes this concept a little bit easier to understand. So when we're talking about Saturn, Chiron crosses over Saturn. Saturn is Capricorn energy. It is the father of the zodiac. It is the structures. It is the things that we contain and control, and often the things that control us. In tarot, Saturn rules the Devil's card. And the Devil card is all about temptations and ego and, control issues, shadow energy coming back. I'm going to use one of my favorite devil cards in tarot here from the Psychic Tarot. We're starting off with Saturn, of course, and here's the devil. Now, see these shadows climbing over the shoulder of the devil here? These are things from the past. These are things that we don't necessarily look at. It's how the subconscious works to constrict us. In other words, the voice of the devil can come from within, and it can come from our past. It definitely does relate to Chiron, as I'll show in a second here. You know what's interesting, though? Look at Saturn there. See how the devil is turning away from that enlightenment? That enlightenment is the interconnectedness of all of us in the universe. And underneath of that is what? The key. much like Chiron. And the rungs or the teeth on that key are heart-shaped. The devil energy here is like clutching his heart and turning away from the key. That can heal the wound. That can move you forward into the collective and into your calling. It opens up to love rather than the constricting fear that sometimes pain from the past can bring up to the surface. Another way of looking at the devil card in tarot is to say it's all about ego, right? The illusion that we ourselves are in control of every aspect of our lives, consciously and unconsciously, which of course we're not. One of my favorite definitions of ego is to use the acronym of it, EGO, evading God's oneness. That's what's happening here. The temptation there is to not want to take a look in the mirror at the things that lie below our surface, at the pain in the subconscious that maybe needs healing before we can move on. Saturn is the taskmaster of the zodiac and a tough teacher, but always with a good reason. Because of course, until we look at these things, until we use the key to open the door to enlightenment within ourselves, we're going to be subject to the things in the past that we feel we have no say over, that kind of haunt the subconscious mind and make us feel like we need to be in control all the time. Saturn asks us to learn the lessons of our past by taking a look at them, by doing the hard work it takes to answer to all of those parts of ourselves that normally we like to hide from. Okay, now right between Saturn and Uranus, which we'll get to in a minute, lays Chiron, that asteroid, the karmic wound. And for each of us, it's in a different sign and a different house. Of course, collectively right now, Chiron is in Aries, and in, what is it, 2026, it's going to shift into Taurus. So those principles of the karmic wound of Aries affect all of us in different ways, while Aries is the divine masculine. It is Mars energy. So there's a lot of healing for masculine energy taking place in the collective now and until 2026. That's why we're seeing a lot of rebalancing happening here. We have the North and South Node, our points of destiny, in Libra and Aries. Aries is in the North Node, the future, our destined path. Chiron is in Aries right now, our collective karmic wound. We're heading towards the more balanced empowerment of our own divine masculine energy inside us, in the collective, and in everything really in the universe. I love that we have the South Node in Venus and the North Node in Mars. That's Venus and Mars come into play together for the next 18 months. There's many other things there too. That's why I chose to focus on soulmate astrology, because with the North and South Node there right now, there is a lot of soulmate unions coming into contact. And when they do, it can bring up all of that stuff, right? That ego, the need to control, the need to think that we are the ones who have the say in our own destinies. Of course, we're co-creators with the universe. And that is kind of what this devil card and Saturn is trying to teach us. Our job is to take the look, to do the work, Capricorn energy, little by little, piece by piece, put in the effort, because that's really how you're going to transcend that. Now, for me, Chiron, which here in the Star Codes Astro Oracle you can see, it's a serpent rising up from below the surface, and the code word they give it is heal. How can we offer healing to the collective in areas that we've never experienced recovery? The devil card, Saturn, temptation. Unless we have actually delved into those aspects of ourselves, we cannot offer that as something of healing to anyone else in any kind of contextual relationship, right? Temptation, the temptation can be to turn away, because it's not an easy process, that's for sure. Now, tarot and astrology has an answer, as they always do. There's no mistake that Chiron lays between Saturn, what holds us back, and Uranus, the future, the change. But in order to get from Saturn to Uranus, you have to pass through Chiron. the wound. You have to learn the lessons. And there uncovers your gift to offer out to anyone else who experiences the same things in different levels in their life. That's where we get the wisdom to be able to hand out the knowing. In relationship, it becomes doubly important because we're talking about creating the energy of love in the collective. And never has there been a more important time for that, right? Okay, so we know what we're dealing with Saturn here. We move on. In order to get to the change, the new hope, the star card in tarot, Aquarius energy, ruled by Uranus, we first need to clear away the wounds, heal. That's where we get the Tower card. Now, the Tower, of course, in tarot isn't directly related to Chiron, but for me it is. Sequentially, it is. The Devil card in tarot is 15. The Tower card is 16. And the star, Uranus energy, is 17. So again, in order to get from the Devil to the new hope, there has to be a step in between. Now, I chose this deck to demonstrate. This is Psychic Tarot for a reason. This is one of the most personalized definitions of the Tower I've ever seen. It always reminds me of that game Jenga, where it's like things are being rearranged within you. And if you pull on that one final block, everything comes crumbling down that was not meant to stand. What's not meant to stand is that controlling energy back here. Until we learn the lessons, though, we cannot move forward, and this is the moving forward. So oftentimes what happens is that wound from within us is calling out to be freed, to be seen, to be understood, because it is what's holding us back from our own future. The star, the hope, our ability to see our true north. This lies in the middle. So for me, the Tower card is often Chiron energy. Strictly speaking, it is Mars, so it's Aries and Scorpio. I also love that, especially since we have Chiron in Aries right now. So let's take Aries and Scorpio. Aries is pure Mars energy, and it is all about the self-empowerment, being able to conquer things out in the world in your full power. It's divine masculine energy. And then we deal with the Scorpio energy, which Scorpio is co-ruled by Pluto. It is the 8th house of the zodiac. What's hidden? What's below the surface? It is the investigator of the zodiac, where everything comes up to be seen so that it can either be judged to fall away, or we need to repeat the lesson and really learn it. That's what Chiron often brings up. Chiron has a role to play in the collective, which I'll get to in a minute. But in relationships, this is what it can feel like when Chiron is at play. So as an astrologer, I often look for Chiron contacts in a synastry chart between two people. For instance, is there Venus in a contact to your Chiron? It doesn't matter to me if it's a square or an opposition or a trine. Whatever, as long as it's touching it, to me, that is a huge indicator that that relationship is going to be very fundamentally important in your life. And it's going to cause some very necessary changes for you. Chiron and the moon is a big one, because if the moon sign and Chiron contact each other in two people's charts, then things that were hidden below the surface that you didn't even know were holding you back will be seen by that other person, will be intuited. They may not know they're doing that. And of course, it works vice versa too. They may not know they're doing that, but all of a sudden this can start to happen and you feel like this. It's coming apart. I'm coming apart. They can see things that I don't know are true about me. They can deconstruct the things, the foundations that were never that stable in the first place. Chiron relationships can be very agitating, absolutely, but they have the greatest potential to heal. And since we are all part of a necessary collective, that means our relationships are too. So the energy we create in love is actually meant to be emanated out to the collective to heal. And that's why Chiron being contacted within a synastry chart is very important to me as an astrologer. Another aspect I look for is if their or your North Node is contacting this Chiron. Within my own birth chart, my North Node, my karmic path of destiny, my true calling, lays in opposition to my own Chiron, which is an interesting aspect you can look at your own chart too. But again, we have a greater purpose to serve to the collective. So if their North Node is contacting your Chiron, for instance, again, there is a big call up there where this person in this relationship has the opportunity to teach you and guide you on a path towards your true self and thereby your true gift to give to the collective. If you both have Chiron in the same place, that's an interesting thing that can happen too, and I've seen it a few times. Yes, there's that natural empathy. Sometimes we'll call that like, don't I know you from somewhere? I just understand you. I just feel comfortable with you. Chiron can be playing in there in a big, big way as well, which is again why it's so important in soulmate astrology for me. When I'm dealing in soulmate astrology, I like to look at the outer planets and asteroids of a chart more so than, say, the sun, moon, rising, Venus. I'm not saying those don't play a role, but when we're talking about soulmates and destined paths and things like that, I kind of focus more on these outer planets. Chiron has been a massive learning lesson and tool for me in my own life in terms of what keeps me out of my greatest potential and my greatest, expression. Okay, so the Tower comes along. And that's where we learn some very difficult lessons. You've heard people say it's the dark night of the soul. For me, that's Chiron, that serpent. Not a little different than the Kundalini serpent, but see, that's that serpent rising up there. That's from the past, from Saturn. It starts to rise up, and then we feel again like we're being kind of spread apart. The ego is dropping away, and that can be a very scary process for sure, but also deeply, deeply healing, which is why I always say avoiding relationships is never the right thing to do ever, because it doesn't allow you the ability to have something to look into. Relationships are the workshop for our soul's development, and this is why. Because very few things can actually access you on a deep enough level to show you what Chiron has. So if we never get the chance to see what Chiron's doing and affecting us in our world and our charts and within our relationship, then we never get the chance to heal from it, and thereby we'll never be able to help other people with that. Now we get to Uranus. Once you process through Chiron, there's a lot more to that, you guys. This is just sort of an introductory to it. For me, one of the most important planets in personal and relationship astrology. Then we get to Uranus, Aquarius energy. The 11th house of the zodiac, Aquarius, is all about the collective, okay? So we go from Saturn in the 10th house, we pass through Chiron, the wound, the work, and then we get to the change and what we have to offer out to the collective whole, both as a relationship and as an individual. Uranus is very disturbing energy. I also, as a reader, tie it into the Tower. It brings about great sweeping changes. By the way, we have Pluto shifting out of Capricorn and into Aquarius next year. It's been in Capricorn for 15 years. This same process is playing out in the collective as it plays out in our personal lives. That's another story. Here we have the change, disruption, the vision for the future. It's kind of like after the Tower comes down and you're sorting through the rubble and you look up at the sky and you see a brand new hope. Maybe a star you never saw before. Right there. Hope. Because now you cannot be subject or dragged down by the things that Saturn kept you held back by so that you could learn from them. Whether this is in a romantic sense or in a relationship sense. Now also, rising sign touching a Chiron is also very, very important, because it means that you have something very interesting to teach each other about your forward destiny. Lots of personal planets to the Chiron is a big thing for me. I also love this version of the star card because it kind of gives me that clear sky feeling. It's all going to be okay. We always say about the star card that it brings healing. Yeah, it does. Because it's passed through Chiron already. It's actually come apart, and only what is true, your true north, can remain. And that energy is a lot more pure of a place to come from when we're emanating out into our collective whole, right? Our relationships on a personal level serve a very functional role in the collective. So a lot of times we ask, well, how can we help? How can we help? This is how we can help. Chiron, your own and within your relationship, it's a very interesting thing to look at as well. I'll do a whole video on Chiron where we'll go into the sign placements and the houses and what that means for you personally, if you guys are interested. In my own life, like I said, Chiron's played a very big role. My placement of Chiron actually conjuncts both my south node, my past, which means it's in opposition to my north node, my future. It also conjuncts my moon sign. And it's in the 5th house of pleasure and creativity. Now, I could go a lot into that, of course, but in your own chart, that's a very key. Chiron is the key. It's a very key aspect to look at. All right, you guys, that's what I have on Chiron. Like I said, I could go on for hours, but look at your own chart and see where your Chiron is. If you feel like sharing that information in the comments box below, I'd love it. It's a fascinating area of astrology, particularly when it comes to soulmates. Because again, soulmates come into our life in many forms and for many reasons. But the opportunity is always to bring healing and to allow us to advance and grow. I love you guys so much. I'll see you very soon. I hope this was helpful. Give the reading a thumbs up if you like it. I'm going to do more of these. They will get deeper. But that's what we got for Chiron today. Bye, you guys. I'll see you soon. I got to get up to turn the camera.